What's up everybody, it's Raccoons. Happy 2025! Sorry for the long gap between the last of my so-called monthly games I played videos. I hope this one is good enough to make up for lost time. This video will cover some interesting games I played in November and December 2024. Although, I played Rivals of Aether 2 more than any of the games I'm about to talk about. The melee brainworms controlling my frontal lobe wouldn't let me talk about it for any less than 20 minutes though, so stay tuned for a full review in the future. Without further ado, what more needs to be said about Super Metroid? It's a certified classic, and a game that gets a genre named after it is probably doing something right. Released in 1994, Metroid 3 follows the bounty hunter Samus Aran's return to planet Zebes in search of the last Metroid, who's been stolen by the space pirate Ridley. She must find items and power up to be able to take on the challenges that lie below. After the opening, the game doesn't give you any more dialogue or directions till the end, allowing you to explore the game at your own pace. Compared to the previous two Metroid games, the environments had varied visual design and set pieces, with the scenery changing every 3 screens or so. If you've played Super before, you can easily form a rough mental map as to where everything is, which is helpful in a genre defined by its backtracking. The world sells its alien atmosphere well, where a generally lonely and mysterious area can switch to being hostile at a moment's notice. The soundtrack is doing a lot of heavy lifting here. Songs like Brinstar and Lower Norfair are catchy and action-packed, whereas Red Brinstar or the Wrecked Ship's music are slow-paced and spooky. Samus's movement in Super is probably the most nuanced of any game on the Super Nintendo, besides maybe Umi Hadakawa-se. Somehow they've made a system which accommodates fine control for precise combat, with the potential for speed when traversing the map. The movement engine is part of the reason Super Metroid has become a popular speedrun game, along with the ability to sequence break to do objectives out of order. For example, you're meant to visit Kraid's hideout once you've got the high jump boots, but you could bomb jump your way up or do a very precise wall jump to enter early. There's countless examples of this. Psychos have figured out ways to beat Super Metroid with only 14% of total item completion. Even if you're not a big dick speed gamer, it feels great to get items you feel like you're not supposed to have yet, even though the designers absolutely knew you could get them. Super Metroid is genius, an absolute classic for a reason. If you're a true gamer, you owe it to yourself to play it at least twice in your life. Welcome to your new job as a tunnel runner. Your task is to fix generators by delivering widgets to them before they explode. Some widgets are on cooldowns, and some require a different input widget to create. Pretty simple if ghost women weren't constantly trying to murder you as you worked. Awaria is the sophomore outing from artist-developer Van Ripper, who previously made the best sokoban about kissing demon women on the market, Helltaker. The game is basically a spiritual successor, delivering much of the same snappy gameplay, pounding electronic soundtrack, and amazing character designs of the first. But this time, it's Yuri. Now, I played this game on hard mode and got my ass repeatedly handed to me. But that's not to say the difficulty is poorly balanced. Every attack is properly telegraphed and dodgeable. There's just a lot of them, and they will force you to reroute on the fly. The fun is in juggling all the cooldowns in your head, while paying your remaining attention on dodging and misdirecting attacks. And if you got, stage restarts happen fast, so you're never out of the action for too long. Although, most people will probably prefer the difficulty of normal mode. Discussing any more of the game would take away from actually playing it, I think. Awaria is short, fun, and most importantly free, so I would recommend this to anybody, especially if you enjoy Helltaker. Full disclosure, I haven't beaten the game at the time of this video's publishing, but I will be seeing it through till the end. And no, that isn't out of morbid curiosity or me being contrarian. I think Yiik might be good now. Yiik, the postmodern RPG, has been covered to death, but to catch you up to speed, Earthbound-inspired indie JRPG, occult themes, monologues, Elisa Lam, you're supposed to hate Alex Yiik, yada yada yada. The media publicity this game got with like 8 viral video essays and constant yeeking out memes is unprecedented for how tiny this game from a team of 2 brothers was. It's one of the few truly divisive games in the public consciousness, which I think is a reflection of how fun the game is to discuss. Despite having a protag that does not shut up ever, most of the ideas in the game are presented with little context and left up to the audience to interpret and theorize about. That and some of the dialogue from our good friend Alex is pretty outrageous.
No. Do I look Korean?
It's hard to say. You look vaguely ethnic?
Really? That's what you're going with? Maybe it'd be best if you just didn't mention race again.
Yiik is also one of the few games that has successfully managed to get a second chance. If a game is bad, there's usually no interest or financial incentive in sticking with it. This is rare. The only other example I can think of is No Man's Sky. Yiik I.V was released on December 2nd as a free update to anyone who already owns the original Yiik. It's not really a new game so much as it is a recut version of the original game with added segments that tell a new side story. So basically it's a 7 out of 10 game with occasional dips to 4 out of 10, but with added segments that are 9 out of 10 quality. You're still waltzing around New Jersey in search of missing girls and mysterious records, but every so often you're given control of Nameless Child, who has found herself in hell and has to navigate a hostile and incomprehensible environment. Act Studios experimented with surrealist visuals and interesting camera angles in the base game, but they really leaned into it successfully with the IV content. It's like if Suda51 directed a JRPG. And the music's quality was one of the uncontroversially good aspects of Yiik before, but now the game has over 150 tracks for all sorts of scenarios and moods and individual battles. I've had this stupid dinky version of the main theme with the bad trumpet sample stuck in my head for the past week. Help! The most significant overhaul was to the battle system, ditching the slow action commands of 1.0 for an all-new Persona-esque ATB system. Essentially, you have Karta, which act as your shields, but they're also stat modifiers and have use effects if you want to risk giving up some of your shield. Once the Karta are gone, enemies will inflict bleed on you. Bleed out your HP, and you die. The system takes a minute to wrap your head around, but once it clicks, it's fast-paced and allows for lots of strategic decision-making. And it's not for nothing either. Even for seasoned JRPG heads, the game gets moderately challenging at points. I found just about every skill, item, and party member to be useful to save my ass in some situation or another. They also updated the Mine Dungeon to be fully explorable with some real trippy visuals. You can 3D platform around to find new Karta and skills, while also having the option to quickly level up if that's all you need to do. I don't have full thoughts on the story, but I'm really enjoying what I've played so far, even if some of the dungeons still do suck. If you thought Yiik had potential before, despite its flaws, you might be interested in checking this release out. Claire the bird is staying with her aunt on Mount Hawk Peak Provincial Park, but the cell service on the island sucks. She must hike to the top of the mountain to receive an important call. A Short Hike is an indie adventure game about diversion. You're given freedom to explore a pleasant, foresty, miniature open world however you'd like, taking as much time to do side activities and find secrets as you prefer. Some of you are already thinking Animal Crossing, and yeah, the game has a similar appeal. The inhabitants of Hawk Peak have mostly silly things to say and inane problems to solve. You can trade a toy shovel with a frog who's building a sandcastle for a real shovel, or pay a park ranger for a golden feather with the spare change you find on the ground, for example. Collecting these golden feathers is the goal of the game. They open up your movement, allowing you to flap your wings or climb just a little bit longer. Without enough golden feathers, there's no way you'll be able to make it to the top. You can pay for a few, but most are hidden in the wilderness in treasure chests or given out as quest rewards. Granted, you don't need them all, and you'll find plenty through normal activities in the game. The movement controls are nothing insane, but I really like the gliding mechanic here. You move with the arrow keys, but by releasing them, you drop into a dive and gain enormous speed. It takes a little practice to learn to balance speed with control, but it's really rewarding once you get it right. You'll be heading up and down the mountain a lot, so having just a little bit of skill expression in traversal, especially in as low stakes a game as this, really adds to the experience. Though the graphics are simple, the environmental design is idyllic, with this neat adjustable pixel filter over everything. And the music done by Mark Sparling is just so pleasant and serene, with beautiful pianos, naturalistic strings, and plodding percussions that dynamically react to where you're at on the island. It's these little touches of polish that really push this past just being another cozy game into being a genuinely lovely experience. Needless to say, I highly recommend this one. For anyone going through a difficult period, a short hike's uber relaxing vacation atmosphere might help take your mind off things for a while. Ikachan is a small side-scrolling adventure game about exploring a tide pool as a little squid fella. The game was developed by Studio Pixel, which for those who don't know is one Japanese guy, Daisuke Amaya, who goes by Pixel. In lieu of a conventional 8-way movement system, Ikachan can tilt diagonally up left or up right and swim by pressing the Z key. Beware, Ikachan will carry his momentum and will begin to sink if you don't keep pressing Z. Managing the squid's momentum to bash enemies from beneath and dodge around spikes is the main challenge of Ikachan. It's simple, but it suits the tiny size of the game. The title card said that this was a Metroidvania, but I think there's like 2 upgrades, and the whole map is the size of one area in Super Metroid. The highlight of the game to me is the small stakes story about these little aquatic critters. It's got Pixel's brand of curt, eccentric dialogue writing of 2-bit characters grappling with existential problems. Below concerns about being too fat to fit through a corridor is a certain malaise about earthquakes and running out of time due to food shortages in the tide pool. But the game ramps its story up in a nice way that left me feeling satisfied. I don't know what it is, but Pixel has an uncanny ability to nail a simultaneously bright yet melancholic atmosphere. I think a lot of it comes down to his soundtracks. There's only a few songs in Ikachan, but they have catchy chiptune melodies with occasional minor key harmonies that tinge his compositions with just the right amount of nostalgia. Altogether, Ikachan isn't a mind-blowing essential play, but fans of Pixels will find it to be a charming use of an hour or so. At the very least, it is neat to see an early version of the Cave Story engine in action. Speaking of which, Cave Story is one of my favorite games of all time, full stop. Released in 2004 and developed by Pixel over about 7 years, the game has become one of the most beloved ever and has inspired countless independent developers over the years. Cave Story just had its 20th anniversary in December, and I celebrated that with a replay. You play as Quote, an amnesiac robot who has found himself trapped on a floating island, home to a race of cute bunny people called the Mamiga. For some reason, a mad doctor has found a crown that gives him incredible magic powers, and is kidnapping the Mamigas for his nefarious purposes. It's up to you to meet the denizens of the island and put a stop to his evil machinations. Just like with Ikachan, there's tons of memorable funny characters. Any scene with Balrog in it is a 10 out of 10. Though, I've always thought the secret to make a cute story memorable is to balance it out with some darker scenes and sad moments. You don't get a lot of time to really meet the characters, but Sue and King and Curly really do make an impression on you all the same. The game's pacing is another subtle aspect that makes the game great. Every area, besides maybe the labyrinth, is a total winner, but the scenery changes are fast enough that you don't really feel like you're stuck on one level for too long. And the difficulty between areas scales up nicely too. The graphics are simplistic, but the visual design of Cave Story is amazing and totally unique to the game. The Outer Wall segment is an absolute standout for its melancholy music and immaculate vibes. I really like the area before the core as well. Cave Story is a run-and-gun platformer with simple movement and floaty jumps that work well for the game. Your arsenal of weapons is extensive and cover each other's weaknesses. They can be leveled up by collecting Doritos on the ground, sometimes gaining new functions or power when they do. Taking damage reduces the level, so sometimes it benefits you to be cautious during combat, versus other times where getting risky can end the encounter fast. There's a bunch of hidden weapons and alternate loadouts to find on repeat playthroughs too. A lot of them are pretty well hidden, like needing to go back to the very start of the game to upgrade your Polar Star into the Spur, or jumping around Curly's house to find her, Probably Cave Story's most iconic secret though is the path to the true ending. A lot of actions you need to take are pretty obtuse if you don't have the January 2011 issue of Nintendo Power, but if you do all the steps correctly, you'll be able to access the Bloodstained Sanctuary. The area is tough as nails, and you have to beat it all in one go, but there's lots of lore for only the most dedicated players to find, and the whole final stretch is one of the most memorable I've played. If you haven't played Cave Story yet, the freeware version is still available, and it's just as great as it was 20 years ago. The other ports are hit or miss, but it's still a great game at its core. I even kinda like Cave Story 3D despite the visuals looking like hot ass. There's even a beta multiplayer mod if you want to play the game with friends. Cave Story is a game I personally hold dear and would recommend to anybody. And that about does it for this month's video. Let me know what you've been playing down in the comments section below, and like and subscribe and all that shit. Take care and have a good rest of your year, everybody.